Welcome to the Big Question podcast, brought to you by Brook Street, part of the leading global workforce solutions company, ManpowerGroup. This podcast will feature a blend of interviews and discussions with leading experts. This will include academics and thought leaders sharing their perspectives on the ever-changing world of work. Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to the Big Question podcast. I'm your host, Rhys O'Leary. Today, we're diving deep into the world of corporate sustainability, and as we explore the topic, incorporating ESG in business strategy. In this episode, we are plunging into the crossroads of environmental, social, and governance, popularly known as ESG. The factors, business strategy, and the role these play in fostering long-term corporate sustainability. According to recent studies, the UK has seen a significant uptick in ESG awareness and implementation. A report by the Financial Times reveals that over 90% of FTSE 100 companies now report on their ESG performance. This isn't just a buzzword, it's a fundamental shift in how businesses operate and are held accountable for their actions. Companies across the global spectrum are reevaluating their strategies to incorporate ESG factors more significantly due to their undeniable impact on their overall performance, profitability, and reputation. Whether you're an entrepreneur or someone with an interest in the changing landscape of business, strategy, and sustainability, a strategy-led business executive, or simply an interested listener seeking meaningful insights into the world of business, this episode promises to offer valuable perspectives. We will explore how companies can effectively weave ESG into the fabric of their core strategies. What impacts does this have on long-term sustainability, and how does it resonate throughout their overall performance and reputation? Our guest is no stranger to this topic. James Levey, Implementation Manager for the EU Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive for ManpowerGroup Europe. Welcome, James. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you, Rhys. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been in the company for a long time and I've worked across our brands, but my heritage is Brook Street. And most recently, I was Compliance Director for ManpowerGroup and responsible for our ESG positioning, our offering, and our direction of travel, really. And it's a complex subject for any company to get their head around and to effectively implement strategies and investments that support that ESG strategy. So, I have the responsibility in the UK for that, along with some colleagues, because actually it's not something that a person can just do on their own. You have to have the whole company involved in this.
I suppose one of the burning questions initially is, why has ESG gained so much prominence in business discussions in recent years?
Well, I mean, it certainly has really shot up people's agendas, both from a corporate perspective, but also as a personal perspective. I think you can't help, if you break it down to its constituent parts of E, S, and G, E being environmental, S being social, and G being governance. Clearly, if you take the E element of that, you can't help but understand the landscape and the noise that is there, correctly so, around the impact of climate change. And as custodians of this, as a corporation, we feel that it is imperative on us to take notice of this and respond accordingly. And we are not unique. We are not alone in this. It feels like there's a real groundswell of positive action and opinion, certainly around the E side. Then you've got the S element of it, which is really about the people. It's about expectations from clients, companies, employers, workforce, thinking this has to be better. I have to be in a more rewarding, supportive role where people are looking after me and I am helping the company achieve their objectives. And again, media play an enormous part in this. They are talking to an audience who is receptive and willing and wanting to learn and listen about why things should improve generally. And then the governance aspect of it, again, expectations from our clients, from our candidates, from our associates, from our employees. We should be doing this. This is the right thing to be doing because you have to take care of all of those aspects and do it properly and do it to the benefit of United Kingdom and the world in general.
Absolutely fantastic. I mean, the rise has been exponential, really, hasn't it, over the recent years? How can companies successfully incorporate ESG considerations into their core strategies? I want to caveat that though without compromising on their operational performance and profitability.
Well, yeah, I mean that is something that needs to be considered, but I don't necessarily see a direct conflict there, Reese. To be honest, I believe you can absolutely have the two elements. You can have the strategies, you can have the investment, you can have everything that you would normally do as a company in terms of development and growth and forward direction. But you'd also want to be taking care of the E, the S, and the G in that response. And I think if you have a group of people at the head of a company plus the employees supporting you, actually, most of the industries can develop strategies that are going to benefit their ESG, overall ESG strategy. I think it is so. It's not easy, it's difficult, because if you think of some of the manufacturing companies, if you think of some of the transport companies, some of the storage companies, rather than the service industry, they have got a lot to do. But equally, there's a lot they can do to improve their packaging, their use of raw materials, their transport, their storage, etc. And in fact, some of the service industries find it a little bit harder to implement ESG strategies because there's no actual product that's being made. So you need to have really deep thought about this in terms of where you would position your investments and how your strategies would impact. And I don't see the need to compromise, really. You're going to have to make some decisions anyway. You may as well make those decisions in the context of ESG and how you can improve your position in the market.
Could you provide us with some examples of how you and your team have successfully integrated ESG into your strategies and the impact it's had on operations and performance?
Yeah, we've done a few things here in ManpowerGroup in the UK. Certainly from an E perspective, from an emissions perspective, and the greenhouse gases. During the pandemic, of course, we all went to hybrid working, flexible working, working from home. So our business travel, for example, was significantly reduced, as was the energy that we used in our offices. And we kind of got into the habit of using Teams, Skype, Zoom, other online platforms so that we could start to communicate with each other and with our clients and with our associates and candidates. So that had a major positive impact on the reduction of our greenhouse gas emissions via our fleet, via our meeting spaces, via our offices. But of course, we've come out of that now, and we are starting to get back into visiting clients, driving around the country, meeting various people. So what we've done is we've implemented a salary sacrifice scheme for the promotion of electronic vehicles. So we are trying to move both our internal fleet and the fleet of company cars that people can purchase to an electric vehicle model. And we intend to have that completed by 2030. It's not easy. There are, certain hesitancies about, do you really want to go down an electric vehicle route? What about range anxiety? Can I get it charged? All those kind of questions that are very real questions for us as consumers in the UK. But our direction of travel is absolutely to reduce our business travel and increase our use of electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles if we're in an interim step. We're also purchasing renewable energy. Now, in most of our locations where we have the ability to do that, we will go down that route. Now, that's going to be possibly more expensive for us as a business. There is a cost associated with these things, but they're costs that we're willing to bear because we see the overall benefit and, longer term objectives in terms of getting us to net zero. If you think about the S side of our work, the social element of it, the way we have introduced affinity networks, groups of like-minded people coming together, having an opportunity to share experiences, share conversations and connectivity to other people, and implementing that to create a more, perhaps happier, more content workforce, an understanding workforce, so that they feel they have a voice, they feel they have an opportunity to influence and shape who we are as a company. And that's cost neutral, there's no sense of that, but it's an active step that we have taken to encourage that whole wellness and well-being of our workforce, because as an employer, we need to take these things seriously. And if you think back to your first question, why are these coming so high up people's agendas? It's because of that. You want your workforce to feel content and feel listened to and contributing actively to the success of the company.
Yeah, I mean, and the social element is absolutely critical, isn't it? And I'm actually an active member and a affinity network leader myself within the business. And actually, I work on the defence side. So the good that we can provide to those people who are potentially underrepresented or not understood is really, really important. And the affinity network, I think, has had a huge impact across so many different areas. How does a strong ESG influence a company's reputation, though? And equally, how can a poor ESG performance impact a company standing in the market?
Well, now I believe that there is a significant benefit to have a positive ESG reputation. People are far more knowledgeable, insightful, they understand, they can recognize, and they are making choices based on these types of areas, rather than, is the product really great? Do I want to buy that product? Do I want to be associated with that product? ESG is important in their agenda as well. So if you don't have a good reputation for ESG, I think that is to your detriment. And I think that is going to cause your brand some damage and harm over time, because people will recognize the good actors versus the bad actors in this space, and they will be making choices, investment choices, consumer choices, work association choices. They're going to want to align themselves to a company that has great credentials, is actively doing something positive in this space, and demonstrating that they care about things like environment, things like the community, things like the social bit, as well as being a proper governance controlled company where you publish all of these results. So I think it's all of the above on the previous questions. I would also say that our clients, certainly within ManpowerGroup, and I imagine across the whole of UK PLC, we are being challenged by our potential clients and our current clients on this, and you have to come up with credible responses. They are going to ask an increasing number of questions about who you are, how you operate, what benefit you bring to the party, and you need to be able to articulate that in a very positive way, because they are making sourcing decisions based on a supplier's response to an ESG type scenario across all of those. And my goodness, if you don't do that, that's where you're going to start to be excluded from tenders, from bids, because it's going up the agenda with our clients. They expect their suppliers and all of those in their supply chain to help them achieve their ESG objectives. And that's really where we position ourselves, because we provide talent at scale across a huge range of industries and companies. we need to be actively supporting those clients in their ESG journeys and demonstrating how we can do that and articulating that to them. So if you have a bad ESG reputation, that's going to cause you some problems, I would suspect, in future. So
yeah, I mean, I think everyone from retail through to service-based industries is seeing the change in the consumer habit and actually the change in the consumer trend as well. And actually looking at the ESG landscape, there are some certain things coming out already. But what do you foresee as potential future trends in that ESG landscape?
I would probably focus on the S element. I think that is still to be developed further, because the social and the societal impact that any company has, both for their own workforce and for their clients, I think will remain and increase in importance in people's minds. And the expectations of those people will also grow. I think that will be yes, I see a trajectory there where people will they will make decisions about employment based on how they are treated and what they want to achieve. Do they want to be trained? Do they want to be developed? Do they want more opportunities? But they do want those, but they want that with a company that has a great ESG reputation. So I think the S is still to be developed. I think if you look at the E for the emissions part of it, many companies in the UK are on that. We know the data, we can record the data, we can therefore start to take action, positive action to reduce our emissions and get us to that net zero target. And, that is replicated throughout UK PLC and global companies and local companies in other countries. I think the S part of it still has some way to go. I think there is more to be done on that. And we are learning as we go along as well, listening to our workforce, listening to our clients, listening to our temporaries and associates and contractors, and trying to understand what they want. And also I would say, Reece, that's probably more difficult to measure as well. It's not hard and fast data based on tons of carbon emission, etc. There's a much more softer feeling, attitude, perception, direction, rather than a straightforward, this is the number of people that we have in these roles and at this societal position. As long as we have in our minds the desire to help people have a greater impact in terms of social mobility, social values, social awareness, I think that's where we are going to be headed over the next few years. But as I say, that's difficult for me to measure. You just kind of know when things are going well. You know when you're getting this right, rather than some empirical data that says, yes, you've absolutely achieved that. So I see that as a little bit sort of open-ended. It's not, I've got there. Yeah, I've got to net zero. That's fine. I can stop now. I don't see that happening on the S side at all. I see that as perpetually evolving and developing, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's quite important, actually, the investment in the individual continually throughout that journey. And you're right, you will get a feeling when you're getting it right.
And equally get a feeling when you're getting it wrong.
Well, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And actually having a hard and fast measurement on that will be really, really difficult. I think, we always chase for feedback. We always look for feedback, but the benefit of that feedback is for improvement and growth and to continue working towards that success. Before we wrap up, what advice would you give businesses that are just beginning their journey towards ESG integrations?
I think it's about understanding your subject, understanding your product, understanding your all of your own internal business processes, but then really investing in understanding the landscape, understanding what steps you could take as a business, and you have to have like-minded people in the room with you. This is not a solitary, I'm on a mission, this is what I'm going to do. You have to bring the people along with you. You have to engage, you have to collaborate, you have to be clear about those objectives. And not the one good thing, but one of the good things about ESG and the direction that most of the companies are going in is the publication of results. Talking about this in public, talking to your client base, talking to your consumer base, and making statements about your direction of travel, where you're going to invest, what your objectives are going to be, how you're going to achieve them, and when you've recognized that you have achieved those objectives. That's all something to be shouted about. That's something to be shouted about. That's a really positive thing. And I think that's what consumers and clients and others will want to see and want to have to hand, so that they can make choices about, do I engage with you as a client? But you have to have the conversation. This isn't just something that happens naturally. It doesn't just sort of, you need to be in a room with the people talking about, where do you think we should be going with this? How do you think we're going to get there? What investments are going to be needed to be made to help us get to those positions? And if you are just starting out, you need to do that at the beginning. It's quite difficult to stitch it back in later on. We've all struggled with that, I would think, as businesses across the UK. We've all come to the conclusion and position whereby, we need to pay attention to this right now. We need to do something. We need to build something. We need to change something. If you can do that from the grassroots upwards at the very beginning, so much easier, so much better for you, and better for your consumers, and better for the ESG environment as well. So yeah, it's not easy. I'm not underestimating the difficulty associated with that. And then you're back to your other question about, well, what investments can I make? How much is that going to cost me? What can I actively do as a company today when I may not have the funds to do that? Okay, you just need to work through that and just determine when you can make those investments and when you can challenge those situations that you've got that are leading you away from a positive ESG reputation response, and how do you get back on track? I would also add, it's not a one-off conversation. We have these conversations continuously in our business, and indeed globally, on this subject, and we are putting resource behind it, and we're putting thought leadership and understanding behind it, and collaboration and consultation around it, and we will be doing that really for forevermore, I think, because it's always developing. So this isn't just a one-off conversation in a boardroom somewhere and we say, yeah, we've got that, we're fine. This is a continually developing and evolving picture. So yeah, it's not an easy journey, but I think it's a hugely important. I would think that if you don't have an ESG strategy, that's one of the bigger risks that are facing any company that out there today. And we certainly, on our risk register, we certainly have ESG as fairly prominent and high up in that risk register as to what we see on the horizon. So you need to invest in that, in the conversations and the collaboration first of all, and sooner rather than later. So
interesting. And actually, I think it's about the accountability, holding yourself accountable to what those conversations are about, and being very clear about what you're trying to achieve as well. James, thank you very much for your wise words today. And they've been wise words indeed.
Oh, thank you.
And there you have it, folks. A real deep dive into the intricate world of incorporating ESG in business strategy. A huge thank you to James Levey, our guest today, for sharing his expertise and shedding light on the nuances of sustainability in the corporate landscape. Thank you once again, listeners, for tuning into the Big Question podcast. If you found today's episode enlightening, be sure to subscribe to our podcast to hear more compelling conversations. You've been listening to the Big Question podcast, brought to you by Brook Street, part of the leading global workforce solutions company, ManpowerGroup. To find out about how we can support your business and give you access to the best talent in the market, visit www.brookstreet.co.uk/employer-services.